Yuji finally realizing that his role, contradictory, you know, to say that, because Yuji argues that no human really has a true role, but it seems like Yuji's accepted his place outside of what we thought was his grandfather's curse to him. You know, his grandfather always told him to save people, you know, no matter what you have to do, save people and die surrounded by others, have a proper death, make your death have meaning. And Yuji's kind of spent most of his character trying to do that, right? That was his whole entire shtick from the very beginning. That's why he decided to join the Jujutsu Sorcerer world when Yaga questioned him, when he said, you know what, one day I'll just be sitting around reading manga and hear about someone dying and it could have been a curse spirit and I'll believe that it's my fault. I can't let that happen. To meeting that finger bearer curse spirit, getting met with the reality of the situation of being a Jujutsu Sorcerer. It is just hell on earth. Losing an arm, almost dying, and almost losing all of his friends in the same time. Almost potentially dying, literally after giving his body to Sukuna. Getting forced into a binding vow that had awful repercussions later on in the story. You have the whole entire Mahito arc, Yuji meeting Mahito, Yuji meeting Junpei, everything. All of that gets referenced throughout the entire story, by the way. Nanami's effect on Yuji, Nobara's effect on Yuji. Everybody's effect on Yuji. It's actually insane, to the point where all the way in Shibuya, we see Yuji get met with that exact same reality he faced with against the finger bearer, right? When the finger bearer faced Yuji with death, Yuji was crying, he was sniveling, he was, I was literally running track and field a week ago. Whereas now fighting Choso, when Yuji was met with death, he accepted it and looked it dead on and said, fuck it, if this is how I die, at least I went out doing what my grandpa wanted. At least I went out fighting for my friends. Of course, we know Yuji doesn't die, and that results in Sukuna going off on the major massacre that is the Shibuya incident and killing what may be thousands to potentially, I doubt it would be millions, probably more likely thousands, maybe tens of thousands at most. It's appalling to see him take that into himself and go to Mahito at the end of their fight. I am you. I'm the opposite. We're two sides of the same coin. I kill curses without a second thought. I'm a cog in the machine. I am merely something that is existing in order to keep my friends alive and die surrounded by them. Still kind of the same idea, but it shifted to being more disparaging of himself. He lost almost like he didn't consider value in himself. In requirement of getting that proper death, he forewent himself. That also ended up fucking him over in the long run. One, against Higuruma, he almost died to Higuruma's sort of execution because he admitted guilt to something that realistically he didn't do. And two, it's what actually allowed Sukuna to potentially break, quote unquote, the binding vow he had between him and Yuji and take over Megami. So that cog mentality was ultimately flawed and needed to change. I think we all kind of knew that. Yuji accepting himself and Yuji accepting his way to die, something that Megami, when Megami was around, tries to deny and argue against and say, no, I don't want Yuji to die. He's going to want himself to take himself out. And then what ends up happening? Yuji does develop himself and become something different. He says, you know what, Sukuna? Honestly, having a proper death doesn't matter to me anymore. It's snuffing out people like you that don't see any value, any intrinsic value in life whatsoever, even in the smallest granular aspect of it. Even someone that doesn't leave their house, literally is bedridden, ill, and sick, someone like Sumiki, anybody has value to their lives, and it's in the small and tiny little bits of their childhood and in their existence that matter. That's what Yuji was trying to do the entire chapter, bringing Sukuna to all of those small little fragments of memories, not the big moments. Again, if you notice while Sukuna and Yuji are talking, Sukuna literally says, oh, well, Yuji says, wouldn't you have already seen all of this if you knew about, you know, Megami's flowers and everything? Sukuna goes, I didn't waste time looking at memories like that, which is funny because it's almost like he's immediately telling Yuji from the get-go. He goes, yeah, shit like that doesn't matter to me. And that's what Yuji is trying to teach Sukuna. That's what Yuji's trying to get Sukuna to see, is that even in these small little pieces, even in these small little pieces of life in my childhood, you know, I was able to find beauty and value in the tiny things, as Yuji's bringing Sukuna through all the small things that he did in the past. Small things that, again, looking back on, probably wouldn't be big moments you would tell when you're going over stories of your life. But at the same time, it's like Yuji says, it's those small, little, tiny moments that make up the bigger picture of life. Yuji has now accepted that every life has value. It's not, death doesn't matter. Life is what's important to Yuji. Having a proper death, focusing so much around dying. That's why he even mentions, you know, we went all this way to this person's funeral. I wonder if that person would have went to my grandpa's funeral. But at the end of the day, does any of that matter? It's you know what I mean? It's, who cares about your death? Who cares about proper death? Why would Yuji invalidate his grandfather's death? His grandfather, like Yuji says, was more of a parent to Yuji than any of his parents were. Obviously, probably because who knows what happened. They might have died. Who knows? Kenjaku got mixed up in all of that. But it's interesting that Yuji honors his grandpa, and while he rejects his philosophy, he comes up with his own that's almost a compliment to what his grandfather wanted out of him. Is, in turn, Yuji will see value in life no matter where it is, even if it's not subtle or obvious. And in that way, through valuing life and also in turn killing and taking out and getting rid of the people that don't see value in those small little pieces of life. That's the answer that Yuji came to. And in that resolving to do that will in turn end up with him dying surrounded by lots of people inadvertently. He's accomplishing both at the same time. I think that after this development, Yuji's going to grow even faster than before. Oh yeah. I think this is his true visualization of his better self. That's why he's capable of domain expansion. Same with Megami, where Megami had to visualize, you know, what a stronger him would be, what himself at a full potential with a domain expansion would look like. And it seems to me that Yuji's prior mentalities and everything Yuji's always been thinking of always held him back. This is finally the chance to make a difference. This is finally the chance to do something. I think Yuji really has completed his character arc entirely. When do I believe Yuji grew this new mindset? I mean, I completely imagine it's something that was done over time, because remember, like I kind of said, the Cog mentality, I mean, obviously there are multiple moving pieces going into it. Megami had his own faults. Sukuna was at play. Sumiki, you know, and Yorozu were at play. There were a lot of factors that went into Megami getting taken over. But one of the barest reasons that was even a possible thing that could have happened was because when Yuji made the binding vow with Sukuna to make sure Sukuna didn't hurt anybody, Yuji's Cog mentality, him believing that he himself had no value, him believing that his value lied in his death rather than his actual life itself, is what brought us to this situation to a certain degree, you know? If Yuji considered himself valuable life, then Sukuna would have broken the binding vow and Enchain would not have worked. However, because Yuji had the Cog mentality, it worked perfectly and went against and ended up fucking everything over in the long run. I remember there was a YouTuber, I don't remember her name. There was a JJK tuber that made a video, and a lot of people were blowing her up. I think it was unjustified. I think her name was Esper or something. Very unjustified to blow her up and everything. But she was arguing that Yuji's feeling of not not being Yuji's feeling of not being a person of value, so much so that Sukuna was able to break his finger off, and because Yuji didn't consider himself valuable, it didn't work. I remember she did not like that take because she felt like it downplayed everything that Yuji had been building towards before. However, I think now that we have full hindsight and context, I think that might have been Gege's entire point, almost, is that the cog mentality and everything that Yuji had been building towards, this idea that Yuji had come up with, was wrong. It was incorrect. It devalued himself, and it put no value in life. It put more value on people's death than it put in people's life. And I think losing Fushiguro, not having Sukuna inside of him, and being able to think about the possibility of not having to go, right? Because think about it, the cog mentality, while born from, Mahito's trauma and dealing with him and basically amounting to the resolve he needed to kill Mahito at the time, and something that he basically just took on and continued with when he faced Akari and Higuruma, everything. It brought him nothing but trouble. I mean, it worked, sure, against Akari. It almost got him killed against Higuruma, and again, fucked up the binding vow in the first place. So I think overall, Yuji might have realized that cog mentality was wrong, and he could even think about it even more so because Sukuna's no longer inside of him. Yuji doesn't have to die anymore. I mean, granted, at the end of the chapter, he gives Sukuna the ultimatum to either go back inside of him or die, but like I said, Yuji in that moment did not have to die. For once, Yuji was not the one that needed to be executed. For once, Yuji could look on the other side and view Fushiguro as the person, as the quote-unquote cog, right? Fushiguro is now the person with Sukuna inside of them. Fushiguro is now the one with the King of Curses who could potentially have millions of lives on their hands. Fushiguro is the one now, technically, that after ingesting all of Sukuna's fingers, has to die for Sukuna to also die with him. Yuji can now finally, instead of looking at things from himself and being selfish to himself, can look at Megami and realize, I don't want that person to die. Just like Megami didn't want Yuji to have to sacrifice himself and wanted to find some way around Yuji executing and getting executed and killing Sukuna a different way, Yuji then takes on that exact role, swaps places with Megami almost, and takes on the role of the savior. He takes on the person of every person is worth saving. Now, he completely doesn't share Fushiguro's opinion of, save selfishly. Yuji believes that everyone is worth saving, and the only people that aren't worth saving are the people that can't see the value in life itself. People like Mahito, people like Sukuna. You can go all the way back to Yuji being a middle schooler and meeting up with Rinamai and fighting those bullies, the bullies that did not value that, that poor nerd, I imagine's life. And then when he looked at Rinamai, he's like, are you with them? And Rinamai was like, no, I'm not actually. Yuji spared him. And I think we'll see Yuji. We see this through Yuji literally offering, of all people, Ryomen Sukuna, the King of Curses for thousands of years, this character that terrorized many of people, even people that Yuji knows, to the point is still currently terrorizing Megami. Killed Gojo, killed Kashimo. I don't know if they care much about Kashimo. Killed Higuruma, caused all of this trouble. This person, Sukuna, Yuji still sees the value in Sukuna's life and offers to spare him. At the end of everything, Yuji looks Sukuna in the eyes and he says, I could be wrong. I can't stand you, Sukuna. But you know what? Prove me wrong. Give me this opportunity right now to prove to me that you can see value in another's life. Get out of Megami, jump back into me, and let's call this a day. which I think is fully, you know, one, honorable. Insane that Yuji is the one extending the redemption path instead of Sukuna being humanized and redeemed through his past. Yuji is literally offering a path to humanization for Sukuna, who just outright denies it. What's up, King Kamui? Bets on Megami being a vegetable? I don't believe so. I don't think Megami will be a vegetable. I think he'll be fine. That would just be dark. That would just be evil. I don't think Gege is that destructive. Shadow Hunter, thank you for the dono. Honestly, after this chapter, I feel like this is the final clash between Yuji and Sukuna, regardless if this is the last arc or not. Oh yeah, this is definitely the final swing. Yuji and Sukuna are finishing their bout right now. There's no more parts to this fight. If there is, someone bring me to Gege's house right now, because this is crazy. I'll give him a big hug. Dion, thank you for the 5. End of series, Yuji being top 3 is looking possible right now. I'm looking forward to more chances at Yuji Glaze. Also, Yuta's a fraud. Sukuna's a bum. Looking forward to more chances at Yuji Glaze and looking forward to more chances at other character. Hey, as always, Dion, never change. Never change. Thank you guys both for the donos. I appreciate you so much. Yeah, I mean, as far as it really goes, I mean, we still don't know technically what Yuji's domain expansion is. So there's big possibilities. It really could go either way. Does this counter Yuta's monster ideology, which really didn't work? Yeah, I mean, potentially it seems like it does. Yuji's philosophy is what most likely is going to end up getting the W. Yuta is currently, like, you know, on the floor waiting for Life Alert to pick him up right now. I don't know if he's coming back. I'm sure we'll find out what happens to Yuta Gojo. I'm sure we will. I don't think he's gonna die. Are you still gonna look at the Reddit today? We might not have time today. We might not have time today to look at the Reddit. We might push it over to next week, but we will see. We'll see how much there is to talk about this chapter. Yuji is going to be one of the strongest characters without the mindsets of the strongest holds. Yeah, I completely agree. It's almost like he's ascended past their mentalities. He's completely created his own way entirely. And it almost makes sense that someone who was so outside of the Jujutsu Sorcerer world and was just like a fish out of water story, coming into this crazy, you know, world of cursed energy, cursed techniques, and insanity. Not only has Yuji completely become a Jujutsu sorcerer, it's almost like he has improved upon the source material. It directly counters that selfish monster mentality. This is why Gojo wasn't the one to kill Sukuna. I mean, if anything, if you really think about it, it brings so much more characterization to Gojo's death in chapter 236, when everyone was arguing how, like, Gojo was like, you know, still with everything, I wasn't able to reach him. Sukuna was still holding back. You know, if you really think about it, no matter what happened, it's so. Let's hold on. Let me pull up the chapter here, because we're basically already discussing the chapter. We're basically already getting into it. So let me go ahead, because it completely references the very first page here. I guess this is the best segue that could possibly ever be made.